Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Kocsis Sports Podcast, Episode 3. I'm your host, Christian Kocsis. Today, we're going to dive into the top 20 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends in my fantasy rankings. As always, you can find the full rankings in my Discord server in the link below. Join up, get the most up-to-date information on all things fantasy, all things sports, NFL, NBA, PGA, UFC, you name it. We're in there. We're keeping you guys updating our fantasy rankings. We're going to be coming out with weekly projections as well for fantasy, so you don't have to worry about that. With that being said, let's kick it off. We're going to start out with running backs. I will say I have everything organized based off of PPR points. I understand half-point PPR might be one of the more popular scoring formats nowadays in fantasy. Personal favorite is PPR for me, and that's where most of my leagues are in. But you can head over to the Discord. You can look at, I have a full breakdown for PPR, half PPR, and standard for each player in my rankings. So I'm going to start off first tier, Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler. I have them both projected. Christian McCaffrey at number 1 with 368 points. Austin Eckler with 367.72 points. I think these players are going to have very similar seasons. I have Christian McCaffrey with 1,198 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns. I have Austin Eckler with 1,067 yards rushing and 12 touchdowns. They're both going to get a ton of work in the receiving game as well. These are very similar players, both in high-powered offenses, both the focal point of the rushing and, to an extent, the passing game, very integrated in the passing game. Can't go wrong with either of these guys. I wouldn't blame anybody wanting to take these guys at number 1, to be honest. So those are the first two in my first tier. Second tier is Tony Pollard, and I have him all by himself in this tier. Very unique. I have him with 1,530 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns. Going to get a ton of work in the receiving game as well. Dude's an absolute stud. One of the most explosive running backs in the NFL on a per-touch basis last year, the year before. And without Ezekiel Elliott there and really no competition, this coaching staff looks comfortable to give him a massive workload, and he's actually my number 1 standard running back by about 15 points. So he's going to get a ton of work in the receiving game, ton of work in the rushing game, ton of touchdowns. He's going to be the focal point of the offense outside of CeeDee Lamb, and he's really going to get the ground game going with this new focus from the Cowboys on rushing. I think he's going to have a phenomenal year. I'm taking him ahead of these guys in this next tier I'm going to list off. So my third tier is Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, and Joe Mixon. These guys are all very different. There's a very different range of guys in this list. Derrick Henry I have with 1,500 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley I have with 1,325 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns. Bijan I have at 1,390 and 9 touchdowns. Dude's going to be an absolute stud in his rookie year. I think that the receiving game is going to be a little less than what some people think. Considering the type of offense that the Falcons play and the style of quarterback that they have and the skill at the quarterback position. But he's definitely going to get a ton of work in the receiving game as well. Have him at RB6 and PPR as in his rookie season. Would it surprise me if he finished a lot higher than that? No. Would it be surprise me if he finished a little lower? Not really. He's kind of got a range of outcomes, especially with, Tyler Algier last year breaking the Falcons rookie rushing, record. I definitely don't think that Tyler Algier is going to really eat as much into Bijan's workload. Bijan's going to get a ton of work regardless. Still think Tyler Algier could get, 150 carries still. Yeah, that's possible. But Bijan is so dynamic, and this offense is so run first. He's going to get work regardless. Derrick Henry, he's going to get work regardless. He is the Tennessee offense. He's going to carry this team again. Until I see him slowing down, I'm not going to project him to slow down. People the past 2 years have been projecting, is this the year Derrick Henry slows down? Until I see it, it's not going to happen. Even a metal plate in his foot couldn't stop him. So he's going to continue to be dominant. He's an amazing player. Saquon Barkley, focal point of the Giants offense outside of Darren Waller in the pass game. He's the number 2 target in this offense. He's going to get a ton of work. He's going to get a ton of dump offs. He's going to get a ton of rushing attempts. He could definitely score, a lot more points a lot less. He's more kind of variable, like I view Bijan Robinson, and not as quite solid as Derrick Henry, or some of those players in the higher tiers. And to finish off this tier, Joe Mixon, I view him as a very stable, very safe pick as well. My RB7, he's going to get a ton of rushing attempts. He's going to get a ton of targets. He's basically the only running back in this offense. Obviously they have dynamic pass catchers in Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Joe Burrow is going to air the ball out most of the time, but Joe Mixon's going to get a ton of work. It might not be as efficient, but definitely I think look for some efficiency regression in the positive direction towards the mean this year compared to last. Last year he's highly inefficient. With the legal troubles behind him now, I'm very comfortable taking him in the second round, but you really don't need to. You can wait till the third. Not a lot of people are very high on him, but I take him over a lot of other players, including players in this next tier who are still great players. But starting off with running back 8 in this tier, Nick Chubb, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Conner, and Josh Jacobs. This is quite a different tier as well. Nick Chubb, James Conner, and Josh Jacobs are a little bit more similar than I think people like to think. Nick Chubb obviously is one of the 2 best pure running backs in the NFL, maybe behind only Derrick Henry, maybe better than Derrick Henry. In terms of pure rushing, yes, he's going to have 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns, I predict. But the receiving game lacks a little bit. Deshaun Watson, I don't think he's going to quite return to form. I'm very, very low on this Browns team this year. I would have Nick Chubb higher if I had higher expectations and hopes for this Browns offense to take a step forward and to really dominate, and Deshaun Watson to really return to his prime Texans, play. But I do not think that that's going to happen. Yes, maybe they take a small step forward, given Deshaun Watson had a horrible performance in his first year, but his first few games after suspension. But Nick Chubb's going to do Nick Chubb things. He's still going to dominate, but I don't think I quite feel comfortable taking him in that top 5, that I have in previous years. Jahmyr Gibbs, dude's going to get a ton of targets. I have him with 988 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns, but he's going to get a ton of targets, ton of receiving yards, ton of receptions, ton of touchdowns. PPR, that is immense value that he's going in the 3rd round, 4th round. Starting to creep up into the second in some leagues. So just know your league and know where you can get him. But I have no problem taking him in the 3rd round. James Conner on a horrible, horrible, horrible dumpster fire of an offense, dumpster fire of a team. But he is the guy in the running back room. And, similar to some other players like Joe Mixon, he's kind of the light version of Joe Mixon, who is an inefficient running back who's going to get all the work on a great offense. James Conner's an inefficient running back who's going to get all the work on a bad offense, but he's still going to get a ton of rushing yards. I have him for 1125 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. He's going to get targets. He's going to get some receiving yards. Might score a couple times through the air. Dude's still good. He's solid. I think people are highly undervaluing him. I continuously get him in the 4th round in all of my fantasy leagues, and I could not be happier than that, than getting him there. Josh Jacobs, I have him at RB11 because I do not have any faith in this Raiders organization, this Raiders team this year whatsoever. Him and Devontae Adams, and then no one else. Don't touch this team. I'm not even really comfortable taking Josh Jacobs, especially at ADP, 2nd round. No thanks. Devontae Adams, I'm kind of steering clear from him as well. Jimmy Garoppolo, yes, he's going to get a lot of targets, but they're going to be a lot more, a lot closer to the line, so he's not going to quite have as dominant of a year last year, Devontae Adams, but, we'll get into that when we talk about the receivers. And then we get into this next tier, and I have Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, Miles Sanders. Jonathan Taylor, obviously, who knows what's going to happen with Jonathan Taylor. Missing at least the first 4 games. Obviously, if he misses more than that, he's going to move down. I think the upside of selecting him, though, at the RB12 is immense. People are getting him in the 3rd round, the 4th round. I just saw, somebody got him in the 9th round in a 12-man league just because everybody was so scared to take him. Don't be too afraid to the point that you miss out on the good value of Jonathan Taylor. He is one of the best running backs in the NFL. Once he gets healthy, and if him and the Colts can repair this relationship, or even not even necessarily repair the relationship, but just get him on the field. Whether they like each other or not, dude's going to ball out when he's on the field. So getting him on the field is the part that we need to get to. And then once he's on the field, his play is going to do the rest. I have him with 1278 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns, and that's baked in that he might, he's going to miss those games, and if he misses more, obviously he's going to go down in the rankings. But don't pass on the value. Next running back, Alvin Kamara. Yes, this is with him missing 3 games. Alvin Kamara is absolutely electric and still a stud. Was he inefficient last year? Yes, but they fixed a muscle imbalance apparently he had in his legs, his leg muscles. He's looked absolutely electric, looked almost better than he has in his entire career this camp, this preseason. He is going to come out and he's going to ball out. Yes, you have some other running backs in that room, Jamal Williams. They brought in a rookie running back, but I'm not necessarily afraid. I still have him with 921 rushing yards, 6 touchdowns, ton of receiving work as well. One of the better pass catching running backs in the NFL. He's going to be absolutely electric. He's going to fit right in this offense when he comes back. He's going to dominate. I have the Saints doing a lot better this year than a lot of people think. And don't be surprised if they're in contention for one of those top seeds in the NFC, come December. Miles Sanders, running back 14, Panthers. He's going to get all the work in the, for Carolina. And kind of another situation, might be inefficient given, the Panthers offense struggling a little bit. Bryce Young might struggle for a while. I think Bryce Young will kind of pick it up towards the end of the year, though. He seems like a very good player. He might, perform a little better earlier on than these other 2 quarterbacks and CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson, just given his situation. So Miles Sanders, I think, is a very good value where he's going in drafts. On to my next tier of running backs. I have Najee Harris, James Cook, Aaron Jones, Ramondre Stevenson. Najee Harris people are scared to pick him, given, for good reason. Jaylen Warren is a highly explosive backup running back. Najee Harris has been semi-inefficient. He's dealt with injuries last year, but he still finishes the RB14 last year, even with an underwhelming season with highly inefficient on one of the worst offenses in the league, in the Steelers, which I think are going to take a massive leap forward. I have them winning a lot of games, which we'll get into in my divisional and conference breakdown videos coming up this week. He is going to get a lot of work. Yes, Jaylen Warren's going to eat into some of that work. Yes, they're going to throw the ball more. He's going to get a lot of work. He's going to get targets. I have him with 1142 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns. I think he's still got it. He's still going to be good. He's healthy, and he has, the Steelers came out and said, Najee is still our guy. I know Jaylen Warren's good, but Najee's our guy. Najee's our RB1. So look for him to have a good year. James Cook is going to have an absolutely huge year for Buffalo. Devin Singletary's gone. I don't really think Damian Harris has it left. Could he eat some short line goal line situation touchdowns? Some short yardage, just like Josh Allen. Yeah, maybe he could come in and take some from James Cook. But James Cook is so good. He looked great this preseason. Nothing but good buzz around him in camp. I love him to go for over 1,000 yards, almost 1,100, 5 touchdowns, receiving work as well. I mean, he's a stud. He's going to be good in his first full year as a true starter. They took him in the second round for a reason. Aaron Jones, he is still a great player. Yes, he's not as young as he once was, and Jordan Love is a quarterback instead of Aaron Rodgers. But I have this Packers team going to the playoffs. I have this Packers team playing well. I liked what I seen out of Jordan Love so far. Aaron Jones is going to have a fine year. He's going to go for over 1,000 yards, 1032, and 5 touchdowns. He's going to get some receiving work. He's going to be fine. Ramondre Stevenson, I had this dude top 10 running backs at the start of the offseason. I was so hyped about him. Unfortunately, Ezekiel Elliott coming in definitely pushes him down a good bit. I think Zeke's going to come in, immediately be the goal line back. I think Ramondre's going to get some goal line work here and there, but Zeke is definitely, that's going to be his role. Short yardage, goal line. Zeke is very good at that. Zeke is slowing down, and Zeke isn't as explosive as he once was in terms of a workhorse back and first and second down rushing, but he is that dude in short yardage situations. He is a big bruising back. He's going to come in and steal work from Ramondre immediately. I have Ramondre at 880 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns. His saving grace is he is one of the best pass catching running backs in the NFL, and he's going to get a ton of work. He was one of the most productive pass catching running backs last year, and that's going to continue. And to round out the top 20 for running backs, I have Breece Hall and Alexander Mattison in a tier, along with Isaiah Pacheco. Isaiah Pacheco's at RB21. So Breece Hall I have at 1045 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns, and Alexander Mattison at 952 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns. I think these guys are both fine picks. I think Breece Hall is very risky. I don't really like taking him very much at ADP, considering they brought Dalvin Cook in. Dalvin Cook's going to get the start probably week 1. He's going to get off to a hot start, I think. Dalvin Cook still got it. Yes, he's not as good as he once was, but he still got it. This running back room, yes, could it be like Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon situation where we still get great production out of both? Yes, but I think Breece Hall is good, but he's not great enough to really, in this offense, outproduce Dalvin Cook to the point of warranting a top 10 to 15 pick. Select him with caution, but that's where I have him ranked. So now on to the wide receivers. Justin Jefferson is my wide receiver 1. No surprise there. And he's in a tier by himself. I have him with over 190 targets, 1863 receiving yards, 13 touchdowns. I think he's going to absolutely have an electric season across from Jordan Addison. And he is going to put up numbers probably better than he has his entire career, because that's what he does. Every year he's getting better, and he's going to continue to get better. Dude is so good. He's looked so good in the offseason. There's no negatives about his game. The only thing you could say is maybe he's not quite as big as somebody like Jamar Chase. But dude's an absolute stud. No problem. 101, that's my selection every time in fantasy football right now. Wide receiver 2, Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase in the next tier. Wide receiver 2 and 3. Tyreek Hill I have for 185 targets, 1,779 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Dude's a stud. I don't really need to say much about him. I mean, he's the fastest man on the planet. He's going to light it up, especially if Tua can stay healthy. Jamar Chase, 185 targets, 1,562 yards, 14 touchdowns. He's going to be an absolute scoring machine this year with Joe Burrow. He's going to put up yards. Him and T. Higgins, best wide receiver duo in the NFL. I don't think that there's really an argument. Potentially Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but Jamar Chase is going to put up huge numbers this year. If Justin Jefferson's gone, if Tyreek Hill's gone, I would take him even at the 103 if those guys were gone. Maybe even over a player like Christian McCaffrey. So it just depends on your what kind of league you're in. Half point, maybe I go CMC, but full point PPR. My preferred scoring format, I'm going Jamar Chase. Next tier of receiver, Garrett Wilson and CeeDee Lamb. Garrett Wilson I have for 1,532 yards, 10 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb, 1,424 and 11 touchdowns. I think these guys are both going to have massive years. Garrett Wilson's going to have a huge second-year breakout with Aaron Rodgers coming into the system, upgraded offense. It's just going to be a phenomenal year, and I think that his late first round, early second round to mid second round ADP is an absolute steal right now. I mean, I have him at my wide receiver 4 actually. So I think he's going to have a massive year. CeeDee Lamb, my wide receiver 5. Every year he produces. There's nothing really to say about him either. He's going to be the main target in this Dallas offense, and he's going to put up massive numbers as well. Cooper Kupp is in my next tier, kind of all by himself. And I'm very worried about Cooper Kupp, but I think that, I personally took him in the back of the second round recently, after going Derrick Henry in the first round, and actually Christian McCaffrey in the first round, my bad. And I think getting him in the back of the second, third round, I've seen fourth round, is an absolute steal. Yes, I understand lingering soft tissue injury, but we don't play fantasy football to not lose. We play fantasy football to win, right? So if you can get a Cooper Kupp who just misses a couple of games to start the year, and then he comes in week 3, week 4, week 5, whenever it is, and he's the wide receiver 1, 2, or 3 the rest of the way, you have an absolute steal. If he misses a few games and then comes in and puts up a season like I think he's capable of, then he's going to have an absolute monster year on the back end, and you're going to get an absolute stud for a back end second, early third rounder. I think that's absolutely worth it in my mind. And before he got injured, I had him for 16, 25 yards and 13 touchdowns on 190 targets. Like I thought this guy was going to be my wide receiver too. I thought he was going to be an absolute dominant force on the field. And I still think he can be that if he can get healthy and come back, which I think is possible, but highly risky. But like I said, we don't pick to not lose, we pick to win, right? So that's how we play. And in my next tier, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Chris Olave. These guys are all super solid, all alpha number ones on their offense. Chris Olave, I think, is alpha number one over Michael Thomas. Yes, he's going to have another massive second year boost, like Garrett Wilson. And he was on pace to outscore Garrett Wilson last year before he got hurt. He missed a couple games and probably would have gotten Offensive Rookie of the Year if it wasn't for Garrett Wilson, putting up his season and staying healthy the whole year. On Mon-Ra, I have 119 catches, 1360 yards, 10 touchdowns. Absolute stud, massive target, best slot receiver in the NFL outside of Cooper Kupp. And he's going to absolutely have a massive year with the Lions. Stephon Diggs, 1485 yards, 9 touchdowns. Number one target for Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and an elite offense. Nothing more you could want. He's the pinnacle of what an elite receiver means. I think that we're starting to get some Stephon Diggs kind of exhaustion, right, in drafts, and he's starting to slip even further back at this, early second, mid second, and I think that's due to people being tired almost of taking him year after year and him just being good and good and good and good every single year, and you kind of get bored with the same player. You want to go for the snazzy Chris Olave. You want to go for, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, Devontae, the next big thing, right? But Stephon Diggs is still there. He's an absolute beast. He's going to be great this season. Devontae Adams, I have him for a lot of targets. I have him for 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns. He scares me, though. I think that he's definitely one of the best receivers, talent-wise, pure athleticism in the league. But I don't know if I quite trust Jimmy G or whatever combination of quarterback they have throughout the season, given his, sketchy injury, Jimmy G. So we'll see, but I definitely think Devontae Adams, I think this is about his ceiling, wide receiver 9. And I think that if you draft him there, you're drafting him at his ceiling. But his floor is much lower than this. So I'm kind of avoiding him draft-wise, but he is a great player. He does have a phenomenal opportunity for target share. So draft with caution. But like I said, we don't draft to not lose. We draft to win. So if you're wanting to get, if you're on the clock and you're between, Devontae Adams, AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith, take the best player. Take Devontae Adams. And so next tier, all by himself, AJ Brown, 1425 yards, 10 touchdowns. When I scored this out, this is just how it happened to work. He had 10 points less than the person, Chris Olave, and he had 20 points more than the first person in my next tier. Dude's an absolute stud. He's Jalen Hurts' number one target. They're getting better in their connection. He had a great year last year. But I think Devontae Smith has also had a great year last year, and he's going to come on and he's going to eat into more of, AJ Brown's workload. And there's a world where Devontae Smith, if he can increase some of those touchdown numbers in a positive way, then, he could outscore AJ Brown. So I don't necessarily like that when I'm selecting, when I'm on the clock at the end of the first round, beginning of the second. I don't necessarily view AJ Brown as safe as some people do, given Devontae Smith's talent. But I think that he's a super great receiver. He's going to do good. Whether he does good or great will yet to be seen. So in my next tier, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, and Calvin Ridley. I have Jalen Waddle for 1,440 yards, 8 touchdowns. Devontae Smith, 1,275, 7 touchdowns. DK Metcalf, 1,121, 11 touchdowns. T. Higgins, 1,235, 8 touchdowns. Calvin Ridley, 1,235, 7 touchdowns. I think all of these players, I have them within 15 points. So it's kind of a preference, right? Do you want the young, fast, number two receivers in Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith? Do you want a super solid, big body number two receiver in T. Higgins? Do you want a DK Metcalf who's almost certainly, primed in a prime position for positive touchdown regression in a massive way? If you look at last year and some of the missed opportunities and drops, uncharacteristic drops, bad throws by Geno Smith, etc. The numbers, show that he's definitely one of the most likely candidates for some serious positive touchdown regression. So if you want to go that way, and big body number one receiver in Seattle, or if you want to go the new hotness Calvin Ridley down in Jacksonville, who I think is going to have a massive year, both Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence and Jacksonville as a whole. Jacksonville is going to compete for the number one seed in the AFC. That's just a preview for the AFC preview, but they're going to be great. Calvin Ridley is going to be great. Number one target and an elite passing offense. So draft him at ADP, draft him in the second round, back into the second round, third round. Sometimes he's going late third round, but he's been creeping up this whole offseason. You could have gotten him in the fourth round in the beginning of the offseason, but now it's kind of late second, early third. So just keep that in mind, but I have no problem taking him over even if you want to take him over some guys in this tier that are ahead of him, I have no problem with it. And then my last few receivers that we're going to talk about, Deebo Samuel, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, and Chris Godwin at number 20 to round it out. There's some other receivers in this tier as well, Deontay Johnson, Mike Evans, and Amari Cooper, but we're going to just talk top 20. Deebo, I have 937 yards, 5 touchdowns. Keenan, 1132, 6 touchdowns. DeAndre, 1075 and 7 touchdowns. Chris Godwin, 1046 and 5 touchdowns, but with 109 receptions. That's what kind of boosts him up. So Deebo obviously is here. His numbers are a little lower. I think he's going to, not have a phenomenal receiving season in terms of some things he's done in the past. You still have Kittle there. You have Ayuk who's ascending, and he's going to really assert himself as an elite number two receiver. Maybe he's the number one target. But Deebo has phenomenal rushing upside as well. He's going to get a few touchdowns. He's going to get some carries. He's going to get some yards. Going to break off some big gains. That's just who Deebo is. So I have him here. He's a relatively safe pick, but I don't think he quite has that upside he once had. Keenan Allen, I'm super high on Keenan Allen. Dude was on pace, massive pace, 1,500 yards in his games played last year. He was on pace to be, he's playing like a top 5 to 10 receiver still. And this offseason, he's been running more deep routes than short routes, like he's used to. And he's been getting, stretching the field, more downfield. So it's interesting for them to kind of employ this in his later stages of his career. But I think he's still an elite receiver, one of the best route runners in the NFL, and he's going to get his as long as he's healthy, which outside of last year, he's been relatively healthy in his career. There's, the lacerated kidney issue earlier on, which is kind of a fluke incident, but, he's relatively safe in terms of targets and yards, market share and his health, I think. So draft him with confidence, and he's going to be an absolute stud. DeAndre Hopkins, yes, Tennessee revolves around Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill is not the best quarterback, but DeAndre Hopkins is a great receiver. He's going to get his targets. I don't think it's going to be quite as good as previous seasons, in his pace in Arizona and obviously the Texans, but I think he's still going to put up good numbers, and where you're getting him is a good value. And then last but not least, Chris Godwin. Huge value. I got him in the 7th round of a PPR league. Couldn't be happier. Yes, Mike Evans is going a couple rounds later, so maybe Mike Evans is the better value. But Chris Godwin's is younger. He's more explosive right now. He's going to be getting all the short yardage targets. And maybe we see him kind of stretch the field a little bit more than usual, given that he has Baker Mayfield, who's actually a pretty good deep target passer. And actually, interesting fact about Baker Mayfield, he had more 20-yard plus touchdown passes last year than Patrick Mahomes did. So that sounds very wonky, but it's true. So I have him rounding out the top 20. I think he's going to be great. Now on to the tight ends. We're just going to go over the top 10 tight ends because once you kind of get to tight end 10, it starts to get to a point where, outside of top 10 tight ends, outside of really the top five tight ends aren't great in fantasy football. So that's why it's such a great positional advantage if you can get someone like Travis Kelsey, in the late first round. Huge value there. That 1Z position that kind of, you only play one of. If you can get that great player who's going to outproduce most receivers, then you're going to walk away with a massive advantage from the draft. But as always, if you want to check out, tight ends 11 through 35 on my rankings, you can head to the Discord, link in the description as well. You can check those out, and you can check them in detail. You can sort them by PPR, half PPR, or standard. So we're going to start with Kelsey, obviously, in a tier by himself. 124 catches, 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns. I think he's going to have an absolutely massive year, even more target share than last year in this Chiefs offense. People just can't stop him. Mahomes and him have a weird connection that I haven't seen with many players, watching football at my age. But they have this very dynamic connection, kind of like Tom Brady and Gronk did, maybe even better than Tom Brady and Gronk's connection as in terms of, getting open for yards. Yes, Gronk had a ton of touchdowns. He's won more, but, Kelsey is just a different kind of player, and he's going to produce at a massively elite level. Yes, I know I'm a Chiefs fan, but he's gonna be the tight end one. It's just a given. Everyone else is vying for second. And a tier by himself at number 2, Mark Andrews. I have him for 97 catches, 1067 yards, 8 touchdowns. This Ravens offense is going to take a massive step forward. With Lamar Jackson, he's going to be airing it out more. This is going to be, in the past couple seasons, it's been kind of a lull for Mark Andrews. Last year was, but if Lamar and him can stay healthy together, with these extra weapons in the offense, taking some attention away from Andrews that he had before in the past, with double teams and stuff like that, then maybe he can put up one of his better years. And I think that that's going to happen. I think where you're getting him in the middle to end of the third round, maybe the beginning of the third round, I think it's a steal. Some people will take him in the middle to end of the second, which I don't necessarily have a problem with in terms of his talent, but there's some other great players as far as receivers and running backs there that I would take over him. But once you start getting into the third round, if he's there in the middle of the third round, I'm going to take him every time. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance, but I'm going to take him every time if he's there at the 305. Then in a tier by himself, next player, Darren Waller, 85 catches, 977 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's going to be the number one target in an ascending Giants offense. I am not a huge Daniel Jones believer and fan in terms of his passing ability, but I think he's competent enough to understand that Darren Waller is the best player on this team in terms of or target and a receiver, and he's going to get him the ball as much as he can. They actually had to take Darren Waller off the field this offseason, this preseason, so Daniel Jones would target some other players. So at least that's our rumor. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's the case, because he's hyper targeting him all offseason, all camp, all preseason. So look for him as a great value. Fourth round, fifth round, if you can get him there, that's phenomenal. TJ Hawkinson, tight end 4, 88 catches, 740 yards, and 8 touchdowns. I think he's solid. They just extended him. He's the highest paid tight end in the NFL. He's going to get a bunch of targets. You know what you're getting. Kirk Cousins is a very solid quarterback. Not elite, but he's very solid. He's going to give him the ball. Kyle Pitts and George Kittle in the next tier, at tight ends 5 and 6. 69 catches for 850 yards, 5 touchdowns for Pitts, and 62 catches, 731 yards, and 7 touchdowns for Kittle. I think that this is a very risky tier. George Kittle has been very injury prone, but when he's on the field, he has the chance to go for 200 yards. Every game he's on the field. He's kind of an up and down road, but if you can get him, later in your draft and hope for health, then you might be in a good spot at tight end. Kyle Pitts, another risky pick. Not in terms of his talent. He's one of the best, tight ends in the league. He's one of the best receivers in the league. I mean, it's in terms of raw talent. But we see all camp long him getting open, him making a man, completely fall off his route, and him putting moves on his men, getting wide open, and then Desmond Ridder throwing it 6 yards behind him, and him not being able to secure the catch because of it. So Desmond Ritter at the quarterback position. Unless somebody else is playing quarterback, Kyle Pitts is going to be my tight end 5. If somebody else was playing quarterback that was more competent, he would be way higher. But unfortunately, that's the situation that we're in. Next tier of tight end, Pat Freiermuth, Dallas Goedert, Evan Ingram, tight end 7, 8, and 9. I have Freiermuth with 65 catches, 705 yards, 6 touchdowns. Dallas Goedert with 68 yards, 68 catches, 725 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Evan Ingram with 68 catches, 700 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think all these guys are going to have solid seasons, solid market share. Evan Ingram's a little bit more risky given that they brought Calvin Ridley in, that they have, they brought Tank Bigsby in. They're going to have less opportunities, but I think it's going to be more consistent now that second year with Trevor Lawrence, second year in the system with Doug Peterson. He's going to get his. They signed him to a, extended contract. He's going to get his. Dallas Goedert, little risky to me, in my opinion, just where he's going. I think Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown really have a stranglehold on this offense. And DeAndre Swift's going to come in. He's also going to get some targets. So he's a good tight end in a great offense, and he's going to get his, but I don't think his ceiling's quite there. Pat Freiermuth, super excited about him. He's going to get a ton of targets. I'm super high on the Steelers offense. Kenny Pickett's second year. He's looked phenomenal this offseason. Only passer in the preseason with a perfect passer rating, 158.3. Pat Freiermuth is, scored a 20-something yard touchdown in one of their games. So he's going to be good. He's going to be, his ceiling, I think, is a lot higher. And I don't necessarily think his floor is that low either. I think he's a solid 4. So he's a very high upside pick to me. I would love to get him in later rounds of my draft. And then the tight end 10 to round out the rankings, Cole Kmet. 2 other tight ends in this tier with him, Zach Ertz and Dalton Schultz. But like I said, you can head to the Discord, check out the rest of the rankings if you want, and you can check out Zach Ertz and Dalton Schultz stats. But I have Cole Kmet with 55 catches, 600 yards, 7 touchdowns. I'm very low in this Bears offense. In terms of receiving, I think that Justin Fields is an elite playmaker. I don't think that he's an elite quarterback in the sense of playing the quarterback position and passing the ball and spreading the ball around this offense. I don't think that he's quite there. Can he get there? Potentially. But he's definitely not there yet, I don't think. But Cole Kmet could definitely get some work. They signed him to a massive extension. He's going to score some touchdowns. He scored 7 last year. I have him with 7 again this year, even with the slight Justin Fields positive regression in terms of touchdown passes that I have built into his statistics. So the rest of the tight end rankings, head over to the Discord, down in the description. And now on to the quarterbacks. So unsurprisingly, my first tier of quarterbacks is Mahomes, Hurts, and Allen, all separated by 3 points total. So if you want to get an advantage at the quarterback position, you can take any one of these guys, and I would be perfectly fine with it. They're all going to do it in kind of different ways. I have Mahomes, 68 completion percentage, 37 passing touchdowns, 360 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and 4,792 passing yards. So I think Mahomes is going to have a solid year. A little bit of regression in terms of passing yards and touchdowns this year, I think. But he's going to get a little bit of rushing. He's going to score some touchdowns on the ground. And I think he's going to be super solid. Jalen Hurts, I have him, positive regression in his passing volume, maybe a little bit less running. But he's going to have a 67% completion percentage, 4,409 yards, 28 passing touchdowns, 733 yards rushing, 11 rushing touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. So I think he's super solid. He's still going to rush for some touchdowns. He's going to pass a lot more, spread the ball around. Super high on this Eagle offense as a whole, obviously, like everybody else. Josh Allen at number 3, 63.5% completion, 4,304 yards, 35 touchdowns, 700 rushing yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, 13 interceptions. Maybe a little lower on him than some people in terms of his passing production, but I think he is a little sporadic at times. His decision making, his completion percentage is a little lower than some of these other elite quarterbacks, but I think he's still going to get his. He's still going to have a great year. In this Bills offense, and this Bills team is still going to compete for the number 1 seed in the AFC. Next tier, by himself, Joe Burrow at number 4. And he's going to pass for 4,705 yards, 39 touchdowns, close to 300 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 12 picks. Super solid year. I have him for the most passing touchdowns in the NFL this year. I think that that's going to be the case. He's going to be great. And, just maybe that rushing upside is quite, what distinguishes him between from this tier to the top three guys. And I just named, yes, Mahomes is a great pocket passer, but he also has a little bit of rushing that's built in with him as well. Not too much, but, it's enough to kind of distinguish them. So next tier, quarterbacks 5 and 6, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert in that order. Trevor Lawrence is going to have a massive year for Jacksonville. I fully am bought in. I believe in them. 67.5% completion. I have him for 4,528 yards, 32 touchdown passes, 400 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. I think he starts to run a little bit more, gets more comfortable. I think he passes it more, and really going to open up this offense, spread the ball around. Calvin Ridley is going to be the main target, but you still have Christian Kirk out of the slot, one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. Zay Jones, Evan Ingram, Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne. They are loaded on weapons, and it's just whether he can perform. And if he can perform, the sky's the limit for this offense and this team as a whole. Justin Herbert, super solid, 67.2% completion, 4,790 yards, 35 touchdowns, 208 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 11 interceptions. I think he's super solid. You're going to kind of see what you've seen from him in the past, maybe a little bit more touchdowns, compared to, last year. But he's going to be great. He's going to be good in this offense. They drafted Quentin Johnson, and nothing really bad you can say about him. I just hope they air the ball out a little bit more this year, maybe. Last year, the offense was kind of stale and throwing it a lot, at the line of scrimmage or, before the line of scrimmage, or, just a couple yards downfield. So Austin Eckler might not get as many targets, as he did last year, but they're both still super solid options. Quarterback 7 in his own tier, Lamar Jackson. He's going to have a great year. 64% completion, 3,467 yards, 25 touchdowns, 1,038 yards on the ground, 5 touchdowns on the ground, and 10 interceptions. I think he does lack as a passer, sort of like Justin Fields, but I think he's a much better passer than Justin Fields. He's just lacks in comparison to some of these other guys I listed ahead of him. And on the ground, he is, it's him and Justin Fields as the most dynamic rushers in the league. You have Jalen Hurts up there too, but I think Lamar is going to spread the ball around. He's going to have actual targets. He's going to be, healthy. Just got a brand new big contract. He's going to be running all over the place. So he's going to be good. I don't think, he's been kind of being taken as the quarterback 4 or 5. So I think it's a little too rich for my blood to take him. But, I think he's going to have a solid season. So if you want to take him early, go ahead. There's nothing quite wrong with that. And to round out the top 10, I have Tua at number 8, Tua Tagovailoa at number 8, just Geno Smith at number 9, and Justin Fields at number 10. Honorable mention in the last of this tier with Kirk Cousins. So Tua, I think, is going to have a great year if he can stay healthy. 65.5% completion, 4,552 yards, 35 touchdowns, 122 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, 11 picks. He's going to have a phenomenal year if he can stay healthy in this offense that is absolutely loaded with weapons. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, even outside of them, it's kind of lacking. But Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I mean, those are some elite players. Tyreek Hill's a top 3 receiver in the NFL, and Jalen Waddle's a top 15 receiver in the NFL. So if he can stay healthy and get the ball to these guys in space and and throw the ball and be a little bit more accurate and stronger on those deep throws that he's kind of struggled with, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, then sky's the limit for Tua. So I'm super comfortable with taking him. I've taken him a bunch of leagues as in the later rounds as my quarterback, and I'm super happy with it. Geno Smith, another guy taken in the later rounds all the time. He's a great quarterback. He's gonna have a good year. 67.5% completion, 4,046 yards, 32 touchdowns, 375 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns on the ground, and 11 picks. I think he's going to be super solid. Jackson Smith and Jigba coming in is only going to boost him. Charbonnet coming in is only going to boost him. He's already had Kenneth Walker in the backfield, and now he has DK Metcalf, Tyra Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. By the end of the year, this could be the best receiving core in the league, not duo, but trio. Total core in the league. It could be surpassing that Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd trio. So it just depends on how Jackson Smith and Jigba plays. But Justin Fields at number 10, this is perhaps my most hot take, and people are going to be very sour about this because everybody thinks he's going to finish as a top 4 or 5 quarterback, and I just simply don't think that that's going to be the case given his lack of his ability to throw the ball. The offseason's been, oh, if Justin Fields can just improve as a passer, he's going to be a top 5 guy, with #1 overall potential. Yes, I don't think he has the ability to just overnight improve as a passer into a Mahomes or a Joe Burrow or something like that. Like he's going to produce as a rusher, obviously that's a given, and as a passer, he's going to produce more than he did last year. I mean, that's a given too. Almost anybody in the league could produce more than him as a passer that he did last year. But I think he's solid. I don't think that he's quite as elite as people think. I have him for 61% completion, 2,839 yards, 21 touchdowns, 1,105 yards on the ground, 8 touchdowns on the ground, and 11 picks. I think that, the Bears, maybe the way they approach him this year is that they want him to pass more and rush a little less to preserve his longevity, which is a fear of mine, because the thing that makes him an elite playmaker, not quarterback, an elite playmaker, is his rushing ability, and he is an elite rusher in the NFL, one of the best pure rushers in the NFL. Dude is pulling away from everybody on the defense as a quarterback. Very Lamar Jackson-esque. I mean, him and Lamar Jackson have this rare ability to be able to do what they do, kind of like a Michael Vick had. And, not quite Cam Newton, because Cam Newton's more like a Jalen Hurts, kind of a bigger body, slower kind of runner, quick, big, scores a lot of touchdowns. I think these guys in Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields are very quick, very fast players, and, they're obviously a little smaller. But I think they're going to try to preserve his longevity, have him throw it a little bit more, and that's a concern of mine because what makes him elite and what makes him an elite fantasy option and elite player in general, playmaker, is his rushing ability, not his passing ability. So they might want to, kind of preserve him and try to have him rush less, and I think that is a massive mistake. Obviously, players like him, rushing quarterbacks, their careers don't last as long as pocket passing quarterbacks. And that's just the reality of it because, you're taking so much more damage. But I think for him to have an elite career and, a successful time with the Bears and, for them to win games, he has to put himself on the line and he has to rush the ball. And that's just is what it is. And he's very good at it. So they need to not restrain him and they need to allow him to play free and play his game. I still don't see him cracking the top 5 at quarterback. But if he can play more free, rush a ton, and just improve, a good amount in the passing volume, and the offense and the coach don't hold him back in terms of rushing as much, then perhaps he could sneak into the top 7, 8. Maybe he finishes around number 6. But for right now, I have him at 10, given my concerns, and that rounds out our top 10 quarterbacks. So that is our top 20 receivers, running backs, top 10 tight ends, top 10 quarterbacks in PPR and 6-point passing touchdown leagues, -2 points for interceptions. So as always, if you want to check out our full rankings, you can head to the Discord in the description below. You can follow our social media in the description below as well. Everything's going to be down there. And thanks for watching the video. If you want to get into content creation, you want to make your own videos, you want to make YouTube, stream, whatever it is, Streamlabs Ultra is the way to go. It's super easy. It's super affordable. It's super high quality in terms of what you can do and the things that you can do with your videos and your streams. So head on over to the link in my description. Sign up for a year membership for Streamlabs Ultra with my code. It's super easy, great to get you started. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. As always, I'm Christian Kocsis with Kocsis Sports. Have a good day.